Hey everybody, and welcome to part 2 of solving equations with variables on both sides. In part 1, we learned how to solve what I call three-term equations. So we had two terms on one side of the equation and a single term on the other side. And you had to box the term that was by itself, and then you just solved using your inverse operations. Today we're going to move on to equations that have two terms on the left and two terms on the right. Okay, so the good thing about this is you get to choose a term to put a box around. So you have a little choice in the matter here. Whatever term you box, though, you do not move. Then you're going to find the term on the other side that is kind of like the term in the box and move it using inverse operations. So the rule is if you box an x, you have to move an x. If you box a plain number, you have to move a plain number. So once you do that step and you calculate your box and do all that, the next term that you box is by itself. So you get choice on step 1. On step 2, you have to box the term that's by itself. Then move its like term into the box using inverse operations. And then you're just going to keep on going until you have x equals a number. So you get some choice, but there is some strategy into picking which term you want to box. And I've had students that choose to do this several different ways. Some students like to box the first term in the equation, no matter what it is. Whatever term is farthest on the left, that's what they are going to box. I've got some students who choose to box the biggest x term so that they don't end up with a negative x. That's a totally fine strategy too. Okay, so we've got the same problem here. We're going to work it out two different ways and see if we get the same answer. Okay, so our equation is 4x plus 18 equals 9x plus 8. So my first strategy is I'm going to box the term on the left, the first term. Okay, so it's 4x. So that means if I box 4x, I have to move 9x. Okay, 9 is positive. So to make a zero pair, I need to subtract 9x. So you write that under the one that you're going to get rid of, and you write it in your box. Okay, so now these are gone. That's a zero pair. Then work your equation left to right. So on the left, I have my box. 4x minus 9x gives me negative 5x. Then bring down the plus 18, bring down the equals, and then bring down the 8. Make sure that when you're bringing that stuff down that everything stays in order. Okay, step 2, I have to box the term that's by itself. I don't have a choice. So I've got two things on the left, and on the right, I just have the 8. So I have to box the 8 on this one. Now that's a plain number. So I'm going to go to the other side, and I'm going to move the other plain number, positive 18. To make a zero pair, I'll need to subtract 18. That makes a 0. Again, I'm going to go left to right. So the first thing I do is I bring down this negative 5x. Then I bring down my equals. Then I calculate my box. 8 minus 18 is negative 10. Okay, last step, we're down to negative 5x. When they're side by side, you need to divide. So we will divide by negative 5. Remember, don't change your sign there. The exact coefficient of x is what we're going to divide by. So negative 5 divided by negative 5 gives me 1x, or just x. And then negative 10 divided by negative 5 gives me positive 2. Okay, so that's one strategy for solving this equation. Let's solve the same equation, and let's do it a different way. Let's say that you're in the group that wants to box the bigger x term. Okay, so I'm looking at this equation. I've got a 4x and a 9x. So some students would say, I'm going to box that 9x because it's bigger. That works. If you box an x, you have to move an x. So we would move the 4x. We would subtract 4x to give us 0. 4x minus 4x is 0. All right, bring everything down in order. So the positive 18 comes first, then the equals. Now I get to my box. 9x minus 4x gives me 5x. And then bring down the plus 8. Okay, so we did our first step. We rewrote our problem. Now we've got 18 equals 5x plus 8. From here, we have to box the term that's by itself, which is the 18. Okay, so I've boxed my 18. It's a plain number. That means I'm moving my 8. Okay, so inverse operations tells me to subtract 8. That gives me a 0. 18 minus 8 is 10. And then I bring down my equals and I bring down my 5x. All right, last step, when they're side by side, you need to divide. So I'll divide by 5 on this one. So that gives me x equals 2. So no matter which term we boxed, we got x equals 2. All right, let's just check it. Our original equation, I'm going to take out the x's, put parentheses. And inside those parentheses, I'm going to put a 2, because that's what I'm checking. All right. Left side of the equation, 4 times 2 is 8. 8 plus 18 is 26. Okay, right side of the equation, 9 times 2 is 18. 18 plus 8 is 26. Since the right side and the left side are equal, we know we got our answer correct. All right, let's look at a few more examples. All right, my next example is negative 4x plus 12 equals 6x plus 2. All right, you can, again, choose. There's several different strategies for picking which term you want to box. I'm just going to go ahead and go with the very first term. Okay, so I'm going to box my negative 4x. Okay, if I box negative 4x, that means I'm moving my 6x. So since it's positive, I'm going to subtract 6x. Okay, I go left to right. I know this is a 0 pair, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel that out. All right, box first. Negative 4x subtract 6x gives me negative 10x. And again, it's really important that when you bring the rest of this stuff down, that you keep everything in order. So plus 12 comes next, then equals, then positive 2. Okay, for step 2, you have to box the one that's by itself. So I've got 2 things on the left, which means I'm going to box the right. All I've got is a 2. All right, if I box a plain number, I have to move a plain number. So I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. That gives me a 0 pair. Left to right, bring down your negative 10x equals 2 subtract 12 gives me negative 10. And then last step, when they're side by side, you need to divide. So I would divide by negative 10 because that's the coefficient of x. So x equals negative 10 divided by negative 10 gives me the answer of 1. Okay, we can always go back and check our work. Start with your original problem. Plug in what you got for x. And I just always put that in parentheses so I know that means to multiply. So negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. And negative 4 plus 12 gives me 8. Other side, 6 times 1 is 6. 6 plus 2 gives me 8. So since those are equal, I know I got it right. All right. Next equation, 15 minus 2x equals 4x minus 3. All right, if I stick with my strategy of I'm going to box the first term no matter what, this time the first term, the one on the left, is a plain number. It doesn't have an x, and that's okay. So let's say I decide to go with this one and box the first term. Remember the rule, if you box a plain number, you have to move a plain number. So that would be that minus 3. So to make a 0 pair, I would need to do plus 3. Okay, so there's my 0 pair. Now go left to right. So on the left, I've got my box. 15 plus 3 gives me 18. And then bring everything down in order. So minus 2x equals 4x. Step 2, you have to box the term that's by itself. Now this is where some students get confused. They try to box the 18 because it's different than the other two, because it doesn't have an x. But you're not boxing the one that's different, you're boxing the one that's on by itself on the same side of equals. So on the left side, I've got the 18 and the minus 2x. But on the right side, I just have 4x. So that's how I choose which one I'm going to box. All right. If I box 4x, I need to move the minus 2x. And the opposite of minus 2x is plus 2x. Okay, so 0 pair. You can cancel it out. And bring everything down left to right. So on the left, I have 18 equals. And on the right, 4x plus 2x gives me 6x. Last step, box the term that's by itself. And then when they're side by side, you need to divide. So this time we would divide by 6. 6 divided by 6 gives me 1x, or just x. And then 18 divided by 6 is 3. Again, we can check our work, starting with the original equation. 15 minus 2, instead of the x, I'm going to put a 3 in parentheses because that's what we're checking, equals 4 times 3 minus 3. Now be careful here with order of operations. On the left side, we have to multiply first. So 15 minus 2 times 3 is 6. And 15 minus 6 is 9. Okay, on the right side, we have 4 times 3, which is 12. And 12 minus 3 is 9. So since these match, they are equal, and I know I got it right. Now for these last two problems, what I would recommend you do is I would write it down, pause the video and try to work it out, and then come back and see if you got it right. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let's say this time that I just want to box something in the middle. Let's say I want to box the 7. That's totally fine. And you may not work it this way. That's okay too. Let's say I box my 7. Is that okay? Yes. Just remember, if you box a plain number, you have to move a plain number. So the other plain number would be the 49. Since it's got a minus in front of it, I would need to add 49. Okay, now again, we're going left to right, so be careful here. I would bring down my 2x first. 7 plus 49 would give me 56. So that would come next. Then the equals. Then the negative 5x. And then everything else was canceled out. Okay. Next, box the term that's by itself, which would be the negative 5x. That means I'm moving my 2x. And there's not a sign in front of it, so it is positive. So the inverse would be to subtract 2x. Okay, 0 pair. So I have 56 equals negative 5x minus 2x is negative 7x. Box your 56. And then your last step, when they're side by side, you need to divide. And in this case, we'll divide by negative 7. And then 56 divided by negative 7 would give me x equals negative 8. All right, checking our answer. 2 times negative 8 plus 7, and we're checking to see, is that equal to negative 5 times negative 8 minus 49? Okay, 2 times negative 8 is negative 16, and then negative 16 plus 7 would be negative 9. And we're checking to see if the other side matches it. Okay, so negative 5 times negative 8 is 40. And then 40 subtract 49 gives me negative 9. So they do match, they are equal, so we know we got it right. Again, if I were you, I would pause the video and I would solve this problem and then come back to see if you got the answer correct. All right, on this last problem, I am going to box the first term because that is the most common thing that my students like to do. Box the first term every time, and that's fine. It's a valid strategy. All right, if I box the negative 12, that's a plain number. So I'm looking on this other side, and the other plain number is negative 36. So I'm going to add 36 to both sides. And then this makes a zero pair. All right, work left to right. Negative 12 plus 36 is 24. Then bring everything down in order, especially the equal sign. Don't let it get out of its spot. Okay, now we would box our 3x. If you box an x, you have to move an x. So I see plus 9x, so the inverse would be minus 9x. Okay, so 24 equals 3 minus 9 gives me negative 6x. And then last step, when they're side by side, you need to divide. So we'll divide by negative 6. So x equals negative 4. All right, hopefully you got that right. Let's check it. So I have negative 12 plus 9 times negative 4. And we're checking to see, is that equal to negative 36 plus 3 times negative 4. All right, for order of operations, I have to multiply first. So 9 times negative 4 is negative 36. So negative 12 minus 36 gives me negative 48. Okay, so now we want to see if the other side gives me negative 48. Again, I have to multiply first. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. So negative 36 minus 12 does give me negative 48. So I know I got it right. And that is our lesson on solving equations with variables on both sides.